Good morning. A very warm welcome from myself. I'm Lisa Daisel from the Unisa Directorate for Counselling and Career Development. We really want to apologize for starting late this morning. We are just experiencing some technical challenges, to get the presenter with us. We are going to try something and then we will see if it works so that we can then continue with the session. I'm just going to ask my colleague, Mrs. Mandu Makanya, to welcome us as well as the presenter, and then we will get her to start her presentation. So this morning we're talking about career opportunities in the media industry. Thank you, Mandu.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you, and apologies for the glitches. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our guest speaker for the day. Her name is Nomsa Mdhluli, and she is an award-winning broadcaster and former news anchor on SAFM, who is also a successful businesswoman and entrepreneur in her own right. Her media career started in 2010 when she joined the PRIMEDIA Group in Cape Town as a radio news anchor, a reporter, producer at various stages: Cape Talk, KFM, Radio 702, and EWN. She was recruited to SABC News in 2015 and is currently occupying the position of an editor for SABC Radio News. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Ms. Nomsa Mdhluli. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Makanya. I wonder if anyone can hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can perfectly hear you well.
So to be honest, what happened now with the technical issues is basically what I go through on a daily basis. Solving crises, and sometimes you might plan a day, more especially in the live broadcasting space, but sometimes things don't quite work as planned. So a lot of the times we just have to keep calm, and a lot of the times, viewers or even listeners of radio stations don't actually know what goes on in the background, but a lot of the times you'll find that we are doing some crisis management. So the best thing when things like this happen, which a lot of you will experience when you get into the industry, is keep calm and smile. So unfortunately you can't see my smile right now, but it's so good to be with you guys, and also to share my journey with you, and also to share the opportunities that are there in the TV broadcast and radio broadcast space as well. So I'm actually going to start with the operations. I'm going to focus on the operations of the SABC because that's the space that I am familiar with. And Lisa, I'm going to ask you to just go on to the YouTube link that I've sent you. So I'm basically going to use one of the programs on the SABC News channel, The Watchdog. And I just want you to just be aware of everything from the start of the program until the producer comes on screen, and just visualize what you think goes on in your mind. Because sometimes when we're watching television, we think it's just the camera person and the presenter, and there's a lot that goes on in the background, and which will also get me to what entails putting a TV production show together, which will also give you an idea of the opportunities that are there in TV production. I don't know whether we've got that, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm just going to present that quickly. Just give me a second. I'm going to play the video now.
We can stop it there. Now, at the start of this video, you see graphics that introduce the show. There a whole lot of artwork that introduce the show. There is sound that makes you want to actually tune into the. And we have the presenter. The presenter is in a studio, and there's also staff supporting the presenter while they're on air. So it's not only a matter of, cameras and the presenter as well. And also, just to put a show together, there's also work that goes into that. And I'm just going to go into some of the elements of a TV production, more especially a news TV production that is so information heavy, because a lot of people that tune into news are very hungry for information, and on top of that, they're also quite news junkies. So when you put a show together like that, you've got to have a team that is able to put all those elements together. So what we actually have before the start of the show, or while putting a show together, is information gathering. So normally what will happen, the people that are involved in there will be your producers, those that will have a meeting and decide what the content for the show would be, what is in the public eye at the moment, and what needs to be expanded on, the people that are going to be interviewed to make the show compelling. So you have those people as well. And then also within the SABC, we also have a research department, in case you didn't know. So if you want to go into the research space, but you're also interested in media, a lot of companies, including the SABC, actually do have a research department, because you're dealing with such comprehensive information. So you do need people with those skills as well, that support your producers and that also support your reporters as well with factual information. Because one thing that also makes whether a current affair show or a news broadcast, we held by ethics in terms of the information that we get out there had to be factual. So you'll have your research team, you'll have your production team as well that are responsible for information gathering. And then you'll have your technical support. Those will be your camera people, your lighting people, just people who are responsible in ensuring that, because TV is all about aesthetics more than anything else. So they're very important in a sense that you actually enjoy what you're watching. You enjoy the way the cameras move it, the movement of the camera, the lighting in studio, because a lot of those things, if there is no attention to detail, can actually sort of repel the viewer, switch the viewer off. And then we also have the graphics department. That is something that the television industry is also, investing heavily on. So if you've been to a graphic school or you're a graphic designer and you're asking what your place is in the media industry, more especially in the broadcast space, I want to tell you that your skills are required now more than ever. We are moving into HD and we're looking for all types of innovation. So, these are some of the skills that are available as well. And then you've got your on-air and social media support as well. So on-air will obviously be the presenter. We also have the show's director who will tell, the presenter. So the presenter will wear an earpiece, and you'll have the show's director saying, it's time for the next guest to come on. Time to wrap up this interview. This is the person who's coming on, time to take a break, all of that. So all of that while the presenter is on air, they're actually getting those kind of instructions in their ear. And then we've all heard of media convergence. So we've gotten to a point in broadcasting where you are getting convergence of mediums. And what I mean by that is the content that you're getting, for example, on TV is now filtering into social media as well. What I mean by social media, there is YouTube, there is Twitter, there is Facebook, all these social media platforms that you guys are familiar with. The fact that I was actually able to share this clip from YouTube of a show that was live on television just shows exactly how, there's synergy between these platforms, and how that synergy is very, very important, because what we've also noticed at the SABC is you find that a person has missed the show. So by also posting that information on social media, it actually gives the consumer an opportunity to view that show in their own time. And so access to information has really become, quite important in that way. And I know a lot of you, more especially if you've studied communication science, there's this thing of media convergence, and that is what it is about. And the nice thing is you have a lot of media companies that are actually catching on. Another aspect of social media is what you have is people who are actually on social media platforms who are updating the viewer on actually what has been discussed. So a show like the Watchdog will have somebody in the background who's updating on social media sites what the conversation is about, the next guest that's coming up. And so these are some of the skills and what elements that are included in TV production, and just some of the opportunities that do exist. When we the social media space started off, I remember, I think I joined Twitter at around 2007. One never thought that this would be such a critical skill that is needed all around, and we cannot ignore the fact that new media is a critical platform in information sharing. So these are just the elements of TV production. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
We don't have any questions so far, Nomsa.
Okay. And then I would move to radio production, and I think this is a medium that I quite enjoy, because nobody sees you behind behind the scenes, but you actually sell yourself through your voice, your storytelling, and also your compelling content as well. And normally I would advise people, more especially those that are interested to be on air, to firstly start with radio, because radio does not spoon feed you like TV does. TV is highly scripted because you just need to have that flow, because people are watching as well, and any mistakes can really put off the audience. But one thing that I really enjoy about the medium of radio is that it's so personal. You just connect with the listener on a very, very personal level, which is what I enjoy about it. And another aspect of radio that I do enjoy is the talk radio space, when listeners are able to call in or challenge you or contribute to the current discourse on whatever topic is being discussed. So what makes radio, what makes radio is obviously your on-air talent. It's somebody that also has to be quite well known. Radio personalities can be quite impactful. And I always say to people, you do get some radio presenters where you can hear they they don't read, they don't research. And it's quite disheartening for somebody to be actually, occupying such a powerful platform where they can have an impact, and people just come on air unprepared. So, one thing that is really needed in the media space is people who are hungry for knowledge, people who pursue knowledge, people who have innovative ideas so that they can come on air and impact the lives of people. Because on a show, for example, like Metro FM, you've got around 4 million people listening to you on a daily basis. So being on air is not only about having a nice voice, but it's somebody who's got an inquiring mind, somebody who's got a voice that is good to listen to. But what people mostly are looking for is good interaction, somebody who's knowledgeable. People want to learn, people want to be introduced to new ideas, and that's the kind of on-air talent that you need. And the most important people also in putting a show together, just as I've touched on in television, are your producers, because they decide on what is going to be talked about on the show. How are we going to go about talking about it? Who are going to be the contributors, like your guests, and so forth. So they make those kind of decisions. So they're really key in terms of content that goes out there on air. And then you also have going into the convergence of the different media streams as well. You get shows that actually podcast some of their conversations that they've had on air, because as I'm saying, we're living in an era where people want to access information. So another opportunity that exists is podcasts as well, where you can go back and listen to an interview that has been missed, that you have missed on radio, and go back to that. And then also the social media aspect of it, where you have somebody who supports you social media wise, who will, and a lot of the times when these kind of information or discussions that are tweeted, that are happening on radio, it also boosts the radio listenership, because a person would say, oh, Radio Metro is discussing this topic. I see they've tweeted it on Twitter, so I'm going to go back and listen. So there's this just an exciting synergy that is happening. So yeah, all those skills are really, really required. So much more. Gone are the days where radio is just a technical producer, a content producer, and an on-air person. There's just so much that's going on as well. And there's also the marketing element as well. So if you are in marketing, also interested in the marketing space, every brand needs somebody who will market it, who will market the on-air talent, who will market the content that is out there, who will just market the brand. So also such opportunities exist as well in the radio space. I don't know if there's anybody else, any questions?
There's nothing from the participants, but I was wondering about something. I just want to check with you. You mentioned now, there's the producers, the technical support, the social media aspect. If we, and then of course the presenters. If we look at the backgrounds of such people, like for example, if we take a look at the producers, what kind of background do they come from? Maybe in terms of academics, did they study anything specifically? How do they enter the field of radio broadcasting there?
For me, more especially when it comes to production or anything that is content related with the media space, journalism, or even a degree in communications, that kind of background is the foundation for me. Because another thing that you learn in journalism is it teaches you news value. Like, what is news? What is the content that people are likely to be interested in. And it also teaches you to be able to identify the right people that will be able to feed into that content. For example, if you're going to talk about a topic of, let's say, savings, you've got to know who the thought leaders in that space are that really know that topic, that are au fait with that topic, and that will really give the listeners some compelling content. So having a communications or journalism background really teaches you how to be able to identify good content, what is of news value, what the listeners or the viewers will be interested in, and also how to go about packaging that content, because you might have a good idea, but if you don't know how to package it or what angle to pursue, then that angle goes to waste as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Nomsa. There's somebody who asked, and maybe it's connected now to the technical support that you spoke about. Muhammad is asking, are there any opportunities in broadcasting for electronic engineers?
When I think of electronics, sorry, I might not be quite au fait with that term, but when obviously anything that runs with electricity and anything that has to do with technical, of course, skills like that would be required as well.
Okay, thank you, Nomsa.
Okay, so I'm also going to touch on the skills that you need to make it into the radio space, the broadcasting space, whether you're on air, you give on air support, or you're just in the background. It's an information space. So if you are somebody who does not enjoy acquiring new knowledge, who does not have an inquiring mind, who does not read, then the space is not for you. There are just some people who will tell yourself, I'm just not interested in consuming information. Then unfortunately you can look elsewhere. I don't know where, but that's where you can look. And you also need to have an eye for detail, whether you are a camera person, whether you are a producer, whether you are on-air talent, you need to have an eye for detail, and you need to be somebody who's meticulous as well, because one wrong button pressed on, for example, could shut down an entire production. And it has happened where people have made that mistake, and you find that there's dead air, what we call dead air in production. So it really needs a team of people who are really meticulous in what they do. And the space that we're in also needs people who really have a heart for people, a heart of serving people, having the listener, having the audience in mind whenever they do something. So, I'll tell you a lot of the story, like, for example, I've been in radio for a number of years, and sometimes you would come on air and there are things that have happened at home, that personal stuff that you're dealing with. And unfortunately, when you come into that space, you've got to, put in everything that you have, because the last thing that you want the listener to ask is what's wrong. Then the space becomes about you. So it's really a platform that is really where you really have to be selfless and put yourself aside for the sake of the audience in acquiring the knowledge that they need because we also serve as entertainment. And we also have entertainment value, and people sometimes watch television programs or listen to radio to escape from their own problems. So they don't need somebody who's also gonna bombard their problems as well, or somebody who comes on air and is depressed. So it's a skill that I've also had to hold over the years, that being in the broadcast space is really, really a selfless profession. It is all about the listener or the audience. They come first. Their needs, they want what they want to hear comes first, and everything else, is basically in the background. Any questions?
Let me just check quickly, Nomsa. There's nothing so far, so you can continue with the presentation. While I've got this, the stage, if I could just ask those who are attending, please post your questions in the Q&A, so that while we've got Nomsa, that she could address those questions that you've got.
Okay, so I'm just going to share a bit about my very, very colorful journey in the media industry. And every time I tell the story, I kind of realize how far I've come. And right now we are just living in a generation of everything's fast, everything has to be instant. And for one to really be impactful in their career, in life in general, you really have to work hard. And a lot of the people who are in the public eye, if you can listen to their stories and where they started, you actually realize that it hasn't been an easy journey. It had to take a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of just diligence and just being focused as well. So like a lot of South African young people, who some will come from single parent household, some where there's not enough money, to go to varsity, and then after that go into your dream job. So after matric, I was in that kind of situation. I lost my mom at the age of 15. So you grow up in a single parent household. After I finished matric, I was fortunate that I enrolled with Unisa and I got a NSFAS funding. And the funny thing is, guys, career counseling is very important. And I'm sure Mrs. Kanya is laughing in the background, because when I came to see her as a 17-year-old, I wanted to become a psychologist. And fortunately, it's somebody who knew me on a personal level. Was like, you psychologist. And because she knew my personality, she was able to advise that the communication space would be good for me. Obviously, when you do your career counseling as well, there are some tests that you take as well that, kind of assess your attributes and your skills and your weaknesses and your strengths as well. So that is the route that I took. I then applied for a degree in communication science, and I was fortunate enough a year after that to get a job. So I was studying part-time, and that's also the benefit of Unisa as well, is that you are able to study while you're working, and you're also able to study at your own pace. It took me a while to finish the degree, but I did finish. I always believe in, finishing something that you've started. But while I was studying, I got an employment as an administrator at the SABC, which I was employed there for about 4 years, and that helped me fund my study. But there was always this small, still voice that remember the dream that you had as a child. You wanted to be in the media space. And, that feeling lingered on for quite some time. So after I worked for that, I then moved to Cape Town. I then worked for a union where I was a parliamentary researcher. And then as I spoke to friends who are in the media space, they said to me, yes, you've got a full-time job, but find a window where you can volunteer at a community radio station. And I was fortunate enough for the programs manager there to see the potential. And I volunteered there for about a year. I learned such critical skills. So what will happen is that I would go to my full-time job during the day, and then when I knock off at 4, I would go to, the name of the station was called Fine Music Radio. It was based at the Artscape. I would get there at 5 o'clock and read the news. And once I had acquired, those type of skills, I then made phone calls to Eyewitness News, which is the news division of 702 Highveld, and one thing that I've learned is that you've got to be courageous. The media space is the space that is full of rejection, and there might be a no the first time, there might be wait a bit, but never give up on your dream and just continue to hone your skills. So finally, I got a yes. And, I got in there. I was fortunate enough to have people that believed in me. But people can also believe in you to a certain extent. At some point, you've also got to believe in potential and the gift that you have. And I was very fortunate that before I finished my degree, I got that exposure in radio. So I became a reporter, and I also got an opportunity to actually host an overnight show on Cape Talk and KFM as well. And let me tell you, when these were overnight shows, which means they started at 1 a.m., they ended at 3 a.m. At that time, the last bus in my area, I didn't have a car, the last bus in my area ended at 8 p.m. So that is the bus that I would catch. And you get to town, from town, you walk to Greenpoint. I got to work at around 9. I would sit, have my supper, do a bit of my studies. And I remember there was this blue blanket, and I still have it because it reminds me of where I'm from, where I would take a nap on the couch before my show. The show ends at 3 a.m. The first bus out of Greenpoint is at 5 a.m. So you walk to town. And by the time I started doing the shows, it was winter in Cape Town. Those of you who've been in Cape Town in winter would know it is cold, it rains, and so I would walk in the weather. But I told myself, I will not let these circumstances deter me. I found a way, because this is what I was determined to do. So sometimes there might be these little discomforts along the way. Just concentrate on the prize. Concentrate on being successful and having an impactful life, and just reaching for your dream. Don't give up, more especially if you are sure that this is the path that you are made to take. So, so I worked there for several years, and then I moved back to Joburg. And while I was reading news on 702, somebody from SABC then heard me read news on 702, and then I was recruited. I anchored news on SAFM. And when I got there, the morning anchors that had stood in before me, whom I succeeded were well known. There's a lady called Babachini Chetty who read news for SABC 3 as well. So I had big shoes to fill. so they say. But one thing that I told myself is that I'm going to bring my unique self. I'm not going to try and do things like anybody else. And yes, you can look up to people in the media industry work I look up to, but always bring your uniqueness. So I brought in my own uniqueness. I brought in my new ideas as well. So on the breakfast show, I introduced a segment in between my bulletins where we actually tell the listeners what is going to happen during the course of the day, the stories that are on our diaries, the stories that our reporters use to cover as well. And even in that, I brought in my own flavor as well. That, in 2017, I won the Best News Reader Award, PBS. I won again 2019, and in March this year I said I want to step down as a newsreader. I feel now that I want to go into editing space, and when I stepped down, the listeners were not happy. The listeners was, and it made me realize that I put in the hard work, and I brought myself into it, and most importantly, as a Christian woman, I trusted God to the extent that when you leave, people feel the impact, people feel the void, and that's the kind of influence that I want you guys to have. And I'm saying this with the utmost humility, that when you work hard and you remain humble, and you just think outside the box, that is what people will remember you for. And even some that are hunting for talent will come looking for you. And even when there are higher opportunities in your organization, you will be recognized and considered for them as well. So hard work is key. Dedication is key. Loyalty is key. And you can't cut corners. So you always have to pride yourself in your work. And I think that is what has helped me as well, to the point where I was actually seconded by one of my colleagues who's also in the academic space to be a journalism lecturer. And that's what I'm doing on a part-time basis as well. So that is my story. A lot of you could be come from the same background, but there are challenges there are hurdles there, but hurdles can be overcome. Just focus on the goal at hand. Read what you want to do. Read, network if you can, and also get in touch with people who are in the space that you want to in. And also as young people, we just have the thing that we just, from the get-go, you just want to get a salary of 50,000 rand. And sometime to take you there, you at first would need to own your skill by volunteering, because at the end of the day, you will get that skill and you will get where you want to be. So don't be scared of volunteering. Don't look down at volunteering as well, because even in our new space, when we consider candidates, those are some of the candidates that we consider, because it just shows a person's dedicated, that they are willing to do this even without remuneration. So those are some of the kind of things that you should consider as well. Consider the company that you want to work for. Say, can I job shadow, for a week, for 2 months? Just that will give you great exposure into the working space as well.
Thank you, Nomsa. As you were talking, I really, you mentioned the importance of, getting exposure and the way that worked for you, and what you are encouraging others to do is to look for volunteer opportunities. I was just thinking by myself earlier, you spoke about, you know, this how media, one shouldn't just think about, you know, what you see on television, what you hear on radio, but media is so wide, also including things like podcasting and social media. So I guess those would also be kind of platforms that one as a student could use to get yourself, your name out there, if you hear what I'm saying. So even, you know, starting like your own podcast or thinking about how you could join other podcasts that are already existing, you know, that could also be a way for you to start building your portfolio for the skills that you would want to showcase. Yeah.
Building your profile as well, because you know, it's all also about thinking outside the box. There are some people who were rejected by mainstream media, but you also have this new public sphere that is emerging, which is the social media space, where people are now taking ownership of their content, and some you find that this big business is sponsoring them, and so they're able to make money from there. And you find the same people who were rejected by mainstream media, and because of the success of, you know, the social media space and the content that they put out there, they were actually then brought in to work for those same media spaces. So it's about thinking up outside the box and not waiting for somebody to do it for you, and just going out there and being fearless and you know, taking risks. Yeah, that's basically what it entails.
Okay, thanks, Nomsa. And the other thing that I also heard at the beginning when you talked about the different roles, you know, when we think about media, we may, you know, immediately think about the faces or the voices we hear, but there are a lot of support roles within the media industry that one could also explore. So it's not necessarily just about being a presenter or a broadcaster, but also thinking more broadly, or as you say, out of the box for the other kind of roles that could even be more suitable to the skills and the background that you've got.
Exactly. And like, I know a lot of producers in the space, people whose names don't get mentioned on air, that are really in high demand. They are a presenter's dream, that, you know, you get presenters who, you have a producers who are in high demand because of their creativity and just being able to put out there and research on compelling content. So there are those people who are in the background who have these kind of skills that are actually in demand, that people want to work with them. So everybody just in the network of production is really, really, really important. I mean, sometimes, you know, people might look down on technical producers. These are people who will put out the music in the background. If there are callers on the show, who will put through the callers, who make sure that the product goes out on air. There's been a time when there was no technical producer booked, and you should have seen the actual content producer trying to get that show on air, how chaotic it was. So everybody just within that network is important. It's not only the person who's on air, the person whose voice or face is being seen, but every single person within that network is very, very important.
Also, you spoke earlier about the importance of networking. So part of networking is also then trying to identify those roles that I want to call them hidden roles or support roles that are also available, and not to think too narrowly about the media industry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, and for me, that's also what's important about volunteering or job shadowing. Because sometimes it's only when you get into that space that you can identify, oh, this happens. oh, we have this person, where you are actually able to identify other roles that you might be interested in. And it just also opens up your world of opportunities as well. So, but also networking is quite key, and just constantly, searching for people who are in that space. Some will say, I'm busy, I'm too busy to mentor, but there are some like us who are very, very open to mentoring people and to share some of the opportunities or the relevant people that can be contacted for one to access those opportunities. But if you're sitting back and not taking the initiative, you can never have those kinds of information.
Thank you, Nomsa. Somebody on the chat asked, what qualifications do you have thus far?
Okay, so at the moment, I've got a BA degree in communication science. I've got that I did with Unisa. I have a media studies honors degree, which I also studied with Unisa. And then last year, I got a scholarship to study with a UK-based university where I'm studying my master's in mass communication. And, the funny thing about, when I got this scholarship, it was during the COVID times, and I was asked whether I want to move to the UK or study online. And, the person that was helping me said, studying online can be quite complex. And I said, I've studied for both degrees online. So for me, it's a walk in the park. And thankfully, Unisa has prepared me for that. And one thing that I really want to tell students is we should not look down on tertiary institutions and the content and the quality of education, because I can tell you, embarking on my master's degree now, the UK-based university, I've been thoroughly prepared. I must say, the media, anybody who's in the media studies program, media studies honors program at Unisa, it is, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Just the content was so amazing and so challenging at the same time, that when I look back now and the current studies that I'm embarking on, I actually realize how valuable and that has been. And I remember late last year, I actually wrote to my supervisor at Unisa and I said, thank you for thoroughly preparing me.
Thank you, Nomsa. Those are all the questions that we've got on the chat. I think, is there any kind of like last or closing comments that you'd like to make before we end the session?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time and the opportunity, and also apologize for the late start as we try to sort out the technical issue. But as I said, at times life happens and you just have to keep your smile, keep going, remain calm. It's the most important thing, and just focus on the goal. So it's really been amazing spending time with you. If any of you would come up or think of questions after the session, or you were scared to ask a question, feel free to email me, nomsa.mdhluli@gmail.com. So nomsa.mdhluli@gmail.com.
Thanks, Nomsa. I'm going to post your email address in the chat. So thank you for inviting those who maybe didn't feel free to ask the question on the public platform to contact you.
Yeah.
Okay, so from our side, I would just like to thank again everyone who bared with us, that we started a bit late, but I think we got a lot of value out of your presentation. We would like to know how you experienced today's presentation. What did you learn? What else do you need to know? So you're also welcome to send us your feedback or any further comments or questions to either Mrs. Mandu Makanya and or myself. Our email addresses are also on the screen right now. We will also be posting a recording of this presentation on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Unisa Careers. And then we would also like to invite you to keep on checking on the My Unisa events calendar, where we will be posting information about any future events such as these that we are arranging related to helping you manage your career more effectively while you are studying. At this point, I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Bheki Mdhluli, just to end off the session for us. Thank you, Bheki.
Thank you and good day, everyone. On behalf of my colleagues and Directorate for Counseling and Career Development at Unisa, I would like to express my sincere vote of thanks to Nomsa Mdhluli for gracing today's session. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with our students, and also sharing career opportunities that are available in broadcast media, skills that one needs to have, and your journey as a Unisa student. This information will go a long way towards assisting our students, especially those who are pursuing their careers in media studies. Nomsa, we are so grateful for your support and contribution at Unisa. Thank you so much. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Bheki, and thank you again, Nomsa. So remember to keep on checking on My Unisa for future events, and also to go and check out a recording of this session and all our previous sessions on our YouTube channel. Have a good day further.
Thank you so much.